What if everything you thought you knew about sex, desire, and self-worth wasn't quite the whole story? This is The Reveal, a podcast about what happens when we ask better questions about the most intimate parts of being human. I'm Elle, certified sexologist and life coach. And every week I invite therapists, sexual health experts, wellness leaders, and cultural thinkers to help us explore the layered and often overlooked space where sexuality, identity, and emotional truth meet. These are conversations about how we heal, how we connect, and how we find real joy and relief in a world that doesn't always make either easy. Curious? So am I. This is The Reveal. Oh, and just a heads up, sometimes when I forget a word mid-sentence, I jokingly substitute it with the word vagina, even if it doesn't make sense. It's a habit, but honestly, it makes me laugh, and hopefully you too. On today's episode of the Reveal podcast, we're diving into something many partners feel but rarely name, the growth gap. What happens when one partner evolves while the other stays still? When love turns passive, more like a habit than a heartbeat? And more importantly, what becomes possible when both people take radical responsibility for their own growth and for the relationship itself? My guest today is the fabulous Jemma Rane, a transformational relationship coach who helps people break old patterns, build emotional resilience, and create conscious, connected love. With a background in psychology and a unique blend of science-backed tools and lived experience, Jemma guides clients through deep relational healing. Her viral insights on self-abandonment, disconnection, and emotional truth have resonated with millions. And today, we're unpacking how conscious growth can transform love from something that fades to something that flourishes. Welcome, Jemma.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited about this.
I'm excited too. I mean, full disclosure, I've known Jemma for 20 years?
Yep.
25, something like that. So she's my first guest by design. And I'm just a huge fan of your work. And I have been for years. So now I get to talk to you about something that really means something to you. So that's great.
Well, likewise. And so just in terms of this topic, our friendship is a mutually growth fostering relationship, right?
Exactly.
So,
exactly. So then let's just start off with, how would you define a growth gap in a relationship?
I see it and have experienced it as the distance that develops between, one partner and another when one is investing in their personal and relational growth, trying to integrate that into their day-to-day practices or thinking their behavior, and the other one either isn't or is so in such a way where they're not conscious enough about the focus, the impact of that, right? It's just not actually aligning with what supports the relationship. So it really is experienced as distance, as being over time that the two of you are in a different reality, you're speaking a different language. Right.
Yes.
It's
You're disconnected.
Yeah, you're disconnected. That's kind of one of the biggest signs, right? So it
Right.
could be that things can be very friendly and pleasant, but you start feeling that there's like a limit to the breadth and depth of the connection.
Yeah. It seems to me that having a growth gap is not something that people would automatically think about, when they're feeling disconnected from their partner. I mean, I know when people come to see me as a sex coach, it's rarely about the sex. It's about the connection, or it's about communication. So have you seen or experienced situations where one partner evolves while the other stays, emotionally stagnant? And how did they come to some sort of realization that that's what's happening?
Absolutely. I think it happens all the time because, as you said, hopefully this is changing for the younger generations, but we weren't taught to focus on growth in terms of relationships, especially romantically oriented ones, right? We were taught to focus on commitment, as in the quantity of time spent in close physical proximity, like under the same roof, usually, right? So it's just not the model of long-term relationships we were presented with wasn't a growth model. So I think what can happen is the person who has internalized what society deems as the feminine role, right? So especially in women, but not exclusively, is kind of carries that sense of responsibility a lot of the time to monitor the closeness, to have a felt sense of, is this growing? Is this stagnating? Right? And in the stagnation, there's that disconnection. The other partner may have kind of an adaptive strategy in terms of dealing with discomfort of tuning out. So that also creates more distance, more of a gap, right? One partner may have survival strategies that are very related to tuning in, to being proactive about the relationship, and the other one tunes out to cope with that discomfort, that tension. So it could be that they don't both come to the realization that that's what it is. Only one is saying, and they may not be describing it in this way, but saying, I feel lonely. I feel alone in this relationship, even though you may be, close in physical proximity sometimes. I feel like the well-being of the relationship is all on me. It's kind of like one partner feels like they're participating in the relationship. And from where they're standing, it seems like they have another partner, their partner is not participating.
Yeah, I would imagine that the person who has grown ahead or has just grown more than their partner would be the one to realize that there's a disconnect, there is an imbalance, and is probably, and this is a gross generalization, is probably the partner who tends to come from their heart the most as opposed to their head. I could be wrong, but I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's such an interesting area of exploration, because my first response would be yes. At the same time, I've worked with people who, in the disconnection, go numb and very disembodied, right? And so they're watching and they're analyzing and they're noticing, but it's so painful. Like chronic disconnection leads to terrible suffering for us as
Yeah.
humans, right?
Yeah.
So I think it can be a little bit of both, right? They may have had more opportunities and more encouragement in their youth to develop kind of deeper relationships and friendships even that were more based on growth, right? But at a certain point, maybe in the romantically oriented one, to survive the suffering, they go numb. So it's interesting. They kind of pull their heart out of it.
Yeah.
You know?
And try and fix it in ways that doesn't
Yes.
require that. Yeah.
Yep.
So what would it look like then for each person to consciously go into the relationship or this part of their relationship? What would it look like for them both to take responsibility for their own individual growth and check in with each other about that
So,
periodically?
and I like the way that you phrase that in terms of what is the agreement going into the relationship, right? That
Yeah.
it's best if you can focus on that instead of like, do we like the same music, right? And like same movies and all that kind of thing. It's how do you approach a relationship? How do you maintain high quality connection and all that, to really kind of explore, do we both feel that growth is important in the relationship? And then talking about how do you invest in your own growth? And some people may invest in personal growth and then relate it really to their careers, right? And still not take responsibility for relational growth.
Right.
If we do have an issue in this society, in a patriarchal society, that there's still this idea that falls on the shoulders of the partner who has internalized the role of the feminine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Interesting.
So it looks like it's also talking about like how do you like to learn? What does that look like for you? Right. For some people, if you have two partners who say, yes, absolutely, healthy relationships are about mutual growth, right? And for one person, that might mean reading books and watching, and then discussing it with their partner. For somebody else, it might be, going on retreats.
Right.
Doing it in that interactive way and then bringing back what they learned. So it's also for each person to discuss and to know this is what's most effective for me.
Yeah, it kind of dawned on me that we're using the word growth, but we're not being specific about the growth. So, which is great. But if someone's listening to this that is going, growth, 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 what does that mean? I took it to mean spiritual growth, personal growth, even professional growth gives us lessons that we bring into our own relational experience. So I'm wondering, when we are in relationship with someone, or maybe when we're starting a relationship with someone, and we're trying to be kind of awake doing it, and we start that conversation with our partner or our potential partner, asking questions about how important personal growth is to them. What have they read lately? What have they seen lately? Things that affect their emotional temperature, as it were, would be an important area to sort of discuss and investigate with them, I would imagine.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And even just what you notice is that some people are more reactive to, sometimes growth is described as change, right? And some people are more reactive to the word change, right? So, for
Right.
example, when I'm working with men, I don't use it as much because the way that they have told me they receive it is I'm not good enough the way that I am,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Language is so important. Oh my God. I see a financial coach because I am not the best with money or I have not been in the past. But instead of budget, she uses the word plan. What's your plan for this month? And it's so great because the minute I hear budget, I just want to buy all the lipstick. And then when I hear plan, I'm like, okay, I have control over a plan. I'm making the plan.
Yeah.
Um, so
It's like the sense of
language,
agency too,
yeah,
right? I mean, I think
yeah,
that's the other part of what goes on in a long-term relationship, right? Is that sometimes when one person is feeling the impact of that they aren't growing together, they aren't evolving together, and they slide into a place of trying to close that gap by either, doing more and overextending, and it can sometimes turn, maybe at first there are, respectful requests so that both people have agency to make a decision. It can at times slide into, after a while, like demanding, right,
yeah.
from the other person. And then that person feels that their sense of agency is compromised and they feel
Right.
judged. And yeah.
Yeah. How do you, if you're growing and your partner is not meeting you there or vice versa, how do you gently sort of suggest that they might be, I don't want to say in need, but that's the only word that's coming into my mind right now, but that they might try looking into this or that, or I don't know. Do you see what I'm getting at?
I do. I do.
Okay.
And I think, one, I think it happens all the time. And so it's just to be mindful that the person who is making the suggestion, that it, to then step back, to not monitor, to not police the
Mm,
other person's actions and their growth, because then, you see this happening where partners start relating to each other unconsciously as if it's like a parent-child relationship. The one who feels disempowered by that sometimes either just gets very passive aggressive in it, right? It starts delaying responsiveness, or is kind of going to the other partner who initially suggested it for like a gold star,
a
right?
cookie.
Not
Yeah.
so much appreciation, but like the gold star, like you would with a parent. So I think it's a combination of modeling it, right? Just modeling like, oh, the excitement of learning something new and saying to your partner, I heard this thing today. It really resonates with me. I would love to practice that with you and
Hmm.
see what that's like for me and for you, kind of introducing the idea of we're going to experiment. Like, I'm not going to
Right.
control it. I'm not going to be the one who's grading either one of us, but let's experiment together, right? To also speak from a place of, here's what's going on in the dynamics in terms of how they're impacting me, right? You're not blaming the other person. You're saying, hey, I'm noticing a certain dynamic with us that doesn't feel great for me. Here's what would maybe feel better. I don't know. Again, it's an experiment, and to ask questions about what that's feeling like for the other person. And that, I see a lot of people doing all of that,
Mhm.
right? And then what happens is if the other person, they don't see any kind of responsiveness in that, they don't see the other person becoming more active in that way, taking initiative, that's when they can start, the resentment can start to build, the control stuff. So it's kind of like, again, people have agency. They're going to do what they're going to do, and don't, I see the other partner, the growing partner, sometimes in order to stay in the relationship, because they start fearing loss as they feel the distance. Again, I think especially women do this. They start within the relationship, silencing themselves, shrinking themselves, stagnating themselves in the relationship, even if they're growing in all these other areas.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I would say too, thinking about when it's time to accept that a relationship has maybe reached its limit. Maybe there needs to be sabbatical or something like that, when you feel like you've tried everything and the gap is now not only too wide, but now has some resentment packed on top of it. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. For starters, I think I see resentment as a really, really helpful emotion, right? It helps us understand that we are betraying ourselves in some way. We are betraying our wants, our needs, our values. And so it's really, I see people speaking about resentment in terms of their partner as like the resentment proves that the other person's being a jerk, right? And meanwhile, it's giving you information about yourself. So if
Yeah.
you feel resentment building in you, how are you not honoring yourself? How are you getting overly focused and dependent on this other person for your well-being, right? As an adult, our well-being is our responsibility. And to your point, when you start to recognize that your well-being is compromised kind of more long term, because people stay in it for a while, right? They're
Yeah.
pretty
Yeah.
devoted.
Yeah.
That's when it's suffering, right? Your suffering is what you have to pay attention to in that. And again, it's really, really valuable. You start to feel your spirit fading, you don't feel as vibrant,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Yeah. I've just been thinking as you were talking and listening about the word sabbatical as it relates to this subject. And I tend to think personally that sometimes it is okay to take a sabbatical, to say, listen, I love you and I'm committed to this partnership. But right now it feels really, really hard to be in it. And I need to have some time by myself. And that is
Hmm.
either going and staying with a friend for a little while. Perhaps for some, it's going and living apart for 6 months. Do you think that it can get to that point and that it's if both people are really want to try and come together and meet in a place that is maybe not at an equal stance, maybe the person who has grown in one direction where the other one has stayed still, maybe if that person who has stayed still can come just part of the way during that time doing their own work, that's a nice sort of co-creation and compromise, you know? Yeah. I guess it's the co-creation of a new paradigm of growing and then watching your partner also grow, but they're going a little bit slower. Did I make sense?
Oh, it does, absolutely. And
Okay.
I think we see this in platonic friendships all the time where people kind of take breaks from each other. And sometimes those breaks are years, right? And then
Yeah.
they come back together, and you've either both kind of evolved in a way, have more self knowledge and skills to create the next chapter of your friendship, or you don't. And so I agree. I don't think that we have it figured. I mean, look what happens in our long term relationships, right? A lot of them end because one person has outgrown the relationship, right? So I don't think we have it figured out yet. I think it's great for people to experiment with,
Yeah.
as
I
long,
think
and
too.
in terms of what you described with a sabbatical, you were describing both people kind of,
Yeah.
again, investing in themselves, right? It's what someone referred to me as that time with ourselves, where
Mhm.
we get very conscious about how we want to evolve and experience life and improve our relationship with ourselves as the fertile void, which I just
Mhm. Yeah.
absolutely
That's a
loved,
great that's a
right?
great term. That's a great
Hmm.
term. The fertile
Hmm.
void.
Yeah.
I love that, and it's also one of the reasons why I love the idea of living apart together, or was it living together apart? having separate homes or separate bedrooms. I
Yes.
mean, I've been married once, and after that, no shade to my ex-husband, but
Hmm.
I can't imagine living with someone again. But
Yes.
I mean, I like my space. I like my nightly dateline. I can now quote verbatim, but
Hmm.
I think that there's something to be said about having that kind of space between you two and yet still maintaining an intimacy, you know? Like I look at that and I go, do I want a partner? Yeah, that would be nice to have a partner. Be nice to have a partner to do things with and go places with and have that romantic feeling with while I live alone, you know?
I get it. Yeah, I get it.
There is something at this age too, you know, our 40s and 50s where we just don't want, we know what we like. We know what makes us happy. We know we want to protect our peace. We want to invite people in as we notice that they will be a great addition to our
I
life.
think that's it, right? You have
Yeah.
to give yourself the opportunity to create that sense of peace for yourself because only then will you be protective of it, right? Like I always say, like to come into someone's inner circle, it ought to be invitation only, right?
Absolutely.
Like you were just referencing, right? So I think something that I've noticed personally, and I see this in other people who've been in very long term relationships, is there's almost like a detoxing from all the beliefs that society gave us about romantic relationships.
Yeah.
And you start thinking, like, man, do we get duped? Right? Like, we are
Oh,
told that, like, the ultimate experience in life, it's just going to solve all your problems. You're going to, right? We're in a society that places romantic relationships at like within a relationship hierarchy. It's not true. But
no.
you don't, I never thought I was someone who would enjoy being with myself on my own for the amount
Yeah.
of time that I now have. And I have more
Yeah.
peace than I've ever had in my entire life. And when I speak to that, about that with friends, everybody's saying the same. All of the people who are kind of claiming this time to be with themselves are saying the same thing. I love waking up in the morning and it's my energy that I'm with. And, I had a mother who had separate bedrooms, after my parents split up with partners she was with following my dad. She always had her own bedroom.
I love it.
You observe that and you think that looks good.
Yeah, it looks really good. I have friends who have separate bedrooms from their partners.
Mm-hmm.
And when I ask them how it works out, they're like, "Oh god, it's great. I have a
Mm-hmm.
different way to decorate my bedroom. I go to bed at a different time, and it helps the sex life because how am I gonna
Yeah.
miss you if you never go away?" You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah, there's
You know?
healthy distance, right? There's
Mhm.
healthy distance. So you can be anchored in yourself in a healthier way. And then there is enough distance, right, to kind of
Yeah.
reach out for somebody else and that again, it kind of invites that exploration and discovery that's so important for the healthy connection. I agree.
Yeah, and it makes it also kind of fun because now you know that
Yes.
when your partner is making eyes at you, it's something they really wanna do. It's not you guys are getting into bed together and it's like, "Oh, it's Wednesday, we haven't had sex for a week. I suppose I
Yep.
should try." That's the best way to kill eroticism is not adding anything sort of new or any sort of excitement or
Absolutely.
doing the same old thing over
Absolutely.
and over again. Yeah.
Right, where there's that sense of kind of fusion with the person, right? There is not healthy differentiation in that. Yeah.
I have had situations with platonic friends, and I love this. I'm gonna have a guest on later in the season who we're gonna talk about the hierarchy of romantic love and what a
Yay.
show that is.
Yep.
But, I prioritize my friends over everything. They are my family in my life, my
Mhm.
friends and my
Mhm.
family. And sometimes when there are different priorities that we have in our lives, like someone has a baby and I don't have kids, there's a growth gap there because I am certainly not growing in the ways that my friend is growing because she's just had a kid. She's had another human life come out of her. And I can only imagine what that's like. But there is a huge transition in friendship when that happens. And I'm really interested to find out because I have in the past backed off a little bit because I'm like, I don't know what to say. And I don't feel like we have anything in common anymore.
Mhm.
Do you have any sort of advice of how to go about just having the conversation with your friend who's just had the baby or just had the promotion in their job that takes them away from them for 90% of the time, and how
Mm-hmm.
to sustain that relationship so that once the child is going to preschool or once the child is, potty trained or whatever, and the parent has more time to spend, how do we maintain the intimacy and also the friendship when there's such a difference in growth and lateral
Mm-hmm.
difference, but still a difference.
Um, I think it's a great question. I think sometimes you don't for a bit, right?
Yeah,
I think in relationships, there are times where you're really kind of walking beside each other through life, and there are times where you kind of take separate paths for a bit, and it can feel really uncomfortable, and most of us are sensitive to loss. Right? And some
right.
people either reach out to try and pull someone back in when they start feeling the distance and the loss more, sometimes with a sense of urgency. And others sometimes go, this is uncomfortable because I can't find where we can connect at this period. And they kind of pull away. Right. So I think one is just the understanding that it doesn't mean that it's permanent, and you each person, or at least the one noticing it, is going to have to kind of manage that sense of loss.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? If you've been close friends with somebody, if they've been one of the people that you've kind of processed your days together with, or
Right.
you reach out to for your weekend, and they're not available, you're gonna miss it, right? So you
Yeah.
have to have your way of just kind of honoring that sadness, and knowing it doesn't mean that it's permanent, that there's a chance that you come back together. Like you said, when people are kind of all consumed with infants for a bit, right?
Yeah.
But at the time where they start claiming some of their own time again, then I know one of my oldest friends, from middle school, we had our kids at very different times in life, and we just talked about it, right? Like
Yeah.
we could feel that distance
Yeah.
and kind of missed each other, but like we're really close again,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. When you
So,
have that kind of relationship, hopefully it's easy to jump back onto the train. I mean, I've recently moved across the country and I had
mhm,
a relationship with a friend that we really didn't talk that much. We were
mhm.
very, very close, and then we didn't really talk that much for a couple of years. And they actually live close by. So this
Wow.
new place that I've lived in New York, and we've just picked up where we left off.
Oh, I
And
love that.
it's such a nice feeling. I thought there was going to have to be like a conversation and like, why
Uh-huh.
haven't we talked? Is there something going on? But it just felt so easy and it didn't feel like there was anything. And we both feel comfortable enough to be able to say, hey, is there anything you want to talk about or whatever?
Mhm.
And I love that. Also, I look at those breaks in a relationship sabbatical or a friendship. And you have to like, oh God, there's a little bit of a void for my friend that was here, but who's just, had this promotion at work and is busy. This gives me an opportunity to do XYZ.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Take that class I wanted to take, maybe meet someone new, maybe spend more time with a friend that you wanted to spend more time with, or there's
Mhm.
always an opportunity behind whatever that is. I think.
I absolutely agree. It's that combination of, like, first you're gonna feel that absence, and if you are kind to yourself about that, right, you will move through it, and then exactly like you said, whether it's a romantic relationship or platonic, it's like, "Okay, I'm ready now to start shifting the focus, the attention back to what can I do for myself." It's when we feel overly dependent on somebody else for our sense of fulfillment, of happiness, of safety, right? And forget that as adults, we can cultivate some of that. Yes, our best survival strategy and survival for thriving is our connections with others, right? But just like you said, it's an opportunity to kind of go explore on your own a
Yeah.
little bit, meet some other people. Yeah.
And finally, I kind of want to talk to you about how does the mutual growth impact not just fulfillment, but also desire and pleasure? How does this operate when sex has been a very healthy part of someone's relationship and now there's this gap and there's a discordance between you that has affected sex
Mhm.
and pleasure. Have you seen this, and how does it usually come up for you?
Well, yeah, because it impacts, in chronic disconnection, there is it's a threat, right? There's a sense that your safety's been compromised, which really skews even your perception of the other person,
Yeah.
right? And so in that state, you don't really feel safe to be exploratory, People get kind of, right, when they're so like you said, the novelty kind of shrinks. And so with mutual growth, you're naturally going to feel more of a sense of confidence, of competence, of expanded skill set. You're kind of bringing in new ideas, right? So all of that kind of uh, awakening in you, that like the
Yeah.
discovery part, right? And that
Yeah.
kind of exploration and the seeking and the discovery really fuels desire very well, right?
Yeah.
So it's that piece. And then, within, I think a lot of people have a complicated relationship with pleasure because our relationship with pleasure is so tied into our attachment wounds. So there's that piece too, that if you're sitting there feeling emotionally abandoned by a partner, right? It is impacting, you suddenly start thinking, does my partner not care? Do I not matter? Am I not worthy or deserving of feeling good, right? So there's that piece too, that it is your time to, when you're investing in your own growth, to improve your relationship with pleasure, right? Some people are very happy giving. They are really uncomfortable with the vulnerability of receiving,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? It can be very entangled with the anticipation of disappointment. So as soon as they start receiving, they start freaking out that they're going to lose what feels so good, and they can't. They have difficulty in those moments staying in the present. So it's all connected.
Yeah. And, pleasure also comes in so many different forms.
Yes.
Sexual pleasure comes in so many different forms. I mean, I'll often tell people, why don't you just take, penetrative sex off the table?
Yes.
Let's just take that off the table. Let's even take oral sex off the table. Why don't you guys just make a date to cuddle, just to feel each other's bodies? And usually what comes out of that is a feeling of safety and a feeling of connection. And it brings you back to what brought you together in the first place, I think. And it sort of often naturally finds its way back because sex is an integral part, but sex is also so many different things. Pleasure is so many different things.
Yeah, I agree with you. And with that, you're pulling people away from that focus on the performative part. I think
Yeah.
what can be tough that I see in couples is that when the disconnection has gone on for so long, there can be, and this sounds like a really harsh word, but this is the way people describe it. It's the
Yeah.
it's the kind of facial expression and the
Yeah.
body language that I see is there can even be like this self-protective disgust of a
Yeah.
partner just kind of touching them.
Yes. Absolutely.
It activates all kinds of stuff in them. So it's like sometimes they have to work through all of that even before they can get to just experimenting with, can a cuddle be enjoyable?
Absolutely. I had a client once who every time their partner went to hug them, they
Hmm.
thought that their partner wanted sex. And
Yeah.
so absolutely, you're going to be like, but and you're going to tighten up if you're not into it, you know? And by taking that off the table, just saying, we're not having sex, but I just want to feel you. I just want to hug for you. There's nothing, no expectations of anything. This is what I want to do.
Hmm.
And, I think mostly this happens with women because in the
Yep.
past, men have used a hug or an arm around them or something like that as a precursor to like full on, making out and touching and
Oh
sex.
yeah.
And then they're like, the women sometimes feel like, God, okay, well, I guess I fell for it and I have to do it. And, it's not a coming together of two people, you
No,
know?
they're really tuned in to, is
Yeah.
this actually an offering or is this a demand?
Right.
And I would say even to expand on that, the other piece that I see within couples is if the person asking for the hug doesn't yet have the self-awareness to
Yeah.
tune in and realize, am I approaching my partner from a place of kind of being anchored in myself? Almost picture like the image of like a tree, right? I've got my
Yeah.
roots and I'm reaching out for you.
Mhm.
Or is there some anxiety in there that they're not even aware of? So then when they reach out for the hug, the other person can feel, even
Yeah.
though you're saying, I'm not trying to initiate sex, I'm initiating affection, the other person can feel that anxiety and they're, no, I still feel like this is an ask for me to take care of you. Right.
100%. And if you're not coming from, I'll often ask them, I'll say, when you're about to give someone that hug or cuddle or
Mm-hmm.
whatever,
Mm-hmm.
or eye gazing, which is incredibly
Yes,
difficult
power. Mm-hmm.
and very powerful, I will ask them to try and get everything else out of their mind, but to focus on their partner and how much love they have for them, even if they
Mm-hmm.
have to go back a long time
Mm-hmm.
to feel that limerence and that romantic love. But to have that in your mind as you are as you're holding someone or approaching someone or gazing into somebody's eyes, because otherwise they're going to feel that energy. You cannot hide from the eyes.
No, you can't.
And yeah, you can't. I mean, that's intimate.
It is, and it's really what I found interesting. There's an exercise that I do with couples at first with their eyes closed, practicing tuning into themselves, tuning into the environment, tuning into the other person, returning to tuning into themselves, right? And then opening their eyes and holding the gaze. And what I've seen happen a number of times is the partner who has been pretty nearly screaming from the rooftops that they
Yeah.
want more intimacy, that partner is sometimes more uncomfortable holding the gaze than the one who's been kind of more using a survival strategy of withdrawing and avoidance. And it can be really surprising for the one who's been more conscious of their desire for deeper intimacy. They've been more tuned into their fears of emotional abandonment and less aware of their own fear of intimacy,
Yeah.
you know?
I can see that. I can see that absolutely. Thank you, Gemma. This has been so
Thank
fascinating.
you.
And as always, I love our conversations.
Me too. Me
So I
too.
would
I
love,
always learn something from you.
likewise, my goodness, I'd love to have you back on at some point to talk about something else that's fascinating.
I would love to return.
Where can people find you?
They can find me on my website, jemmaranecoaching.com. They can find me on Instagram, on TikTok, on YouTube. Same,
Right.
Jemma
It
Rane
all
Coaching. Yeah.
great. It'll all be in the show notes so everyone can go. She has a very big following on TikTok, you guys. So I would encourage everyone to take a look there. So that's that. Thank you so much again. And for everybody else, we will see you next time on The Reveal.
Thanks, Elle. This was a treat.
Thanks for listening to The Reveal. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love for you to share it with someone who might need it too. And if you'd like to stay connected, head to ellchase.com to join the mailing list for updates, the Substack version of The Reveal, and early access to new episodes. You can also follow The Reveal wherever you get your podcasts. And if you have a moment, leaving a review helps others find the show. Email for the show can be sent to therevealmail@gmail.com. And of course, if you're on the social medias, I'm at the Elle Chase on all platforms. Until next time, stay curious and remember, the most powerful stories are the ones we dare to tell.